Spine-chilling true terrors, 5 sinister haunted tales revealed from the cursed and unexplained. Sarah's heart raced with dread as she clutched her keys, barely breathing while peering through the thin curtain of her modest Maplewood home. Streetlights flickered violently, shadows casting grotesque forms outside her window. The suburban quiet felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath, waiting. Whispered secrets of children who vanished long ago haunted the edges of her consciousness. What lurked behind the familiar facade of everyday life? It all started when she tore open a plain white envelope tucked sharply into her doorframe, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the yellowed paper. A chilling threat sprawled across the page: "The Watcher sees everything." Goosebumps prickled her arms, the words slicing through the mundanity with a sharp, terrifying edge. In her gut, a familiar horror twisted, a fear rooted in stories passed down through generations that whispered of dark figures and missing children. She shoved the letter into her pocket, terrified. Days passed, twisted in escalating terror. Her neighbor's cat went missing, and with it, she felt a crack in the illusion of safety tightening around her home. Streetlights buzzed ominously, flickering only when she stepped outside. Daniel and Lucy descended into the oddness, whispering secrets about a new playmate named Billy, an imaginary friend with a laugh that echoed in the woods, a laugh that bore an unnerving similarity to tales told by her great-grandmother. At the PTA meetings, hushed murmurs filled the air as eyes darted her way. The atmosphere thickened with suspicion. She sat rigid, her breath shallow as fellow parents traded worried glances. Somewhere deep down, she felt drawn to the shadow of her neighbor, a friendly face who volunteered with a grin. Something in that smile had shifted, twisting into something sinister that lingered just out of sight. As fear hung over her like a heavy fog, she turned to her great-grandmother's dusty journals. They revealed tales not meant for children, accounts of a lurking figure, keeping an eye on the neighborhood kids, feeding on the very innocence that thrived around. Panic pursued her relentlessly, driving her past the brink of sanity. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, laughter echoed hauntingly through the walls of Sarah's home. She padded quietly down the staircase, dread clawing at her throat as she stepped into the chilly darkness. In the fading light of dusk, she found Daniel and Lucy at the edge of the woods, transfixed. The soft, familiar voice beckoned them like a twisted lullaby, pulling them into its eerie embrace. Panic squeezed her chest, cold sweat dripped down her back. They stood entranced, eyes glazed over, caught in a thrall she couldn't penetrate. "Come back!" she shrieked, the desperation rising in her throat. But the trees whispered louder, drowning out her cries, and for a moment, she was sure she'd lost them forever. As the shadows danced closer, Sarah felt the terrible truth dawning upon her: a legacy of darkness lurked under her skin. Was the Watcher not just an external horror, but a sinister thread woven into the fabric of her family's past? In the thickening shadows, she trembled, battling to grasp hold of her children as ancient fears clawed their way back to life. The voice beckoned again, drowning everything she thought she knew in a shroud of darkness. Would she be able to pull them back? Or had the past finally come home to claim her children? Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she rushed towards her children. Each step felt like wading through molasses, heavy and suffocating, with fear clawing at her mind. The laughter continued, a sinister melody that twisted through the trees, wrapping around her like barbed wire. Daniel and Lucy stood enchanted, oblivious to the dread that engulfed her. "Come on, kids. We need to go," she yelled, her voice sounding foreign and desperate against the growing darkness. The glow from the streetlights barely penetrated the shadows, making the woods appear even more alive, sinister shapes shifting just beyond reach, but the children remained still, bodies locked in an eerie trance. The figure lurking behind the trees chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills racing down her spine. It felt wrong, like an echo of something she could never quite grasp but had always feared. In an instant, Sarah forged forward. She reached out, grabbing each child by the arm, and yanked them back. Panic ignited Daniel's eyes, and Lucy snapped out of her stupor, confusion clouding her innocent features. "Mommy?" Daniel asked, trembling. "Why were you listening to Billy?" Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to go now." With a wrenching pull, she guided them away from the shadows, but the moment they stepped back, the laughter intensified, a cacophony of taunting voices rising from the depths of the woods. Shadows spiraled around them, writhing like snakes poised to strike. "Billy said we can play forever. Why can't we stay?" Lucy cried, trying to break free from Sarah's grip. "Because he's not real. He's just a trick." Panic gnawed at Sarah, the hairs on her neck prickling. What was this entity, this watcher, and how had it ensnared her children? She had always assumed they were safe in their neighborhood, but now the very air felt thick with malice, the weight of generations closing in on her. "Please, trust me," she said, urgency spilling from her lips as she pushed them toward the house. "We can play games at home, fun ones that are real. We have to go inside now." As they moving, the laughter morphed into a shrill wail, echoing through the trees, a tortured sound full of sorrow that made Sarah's skin crawl. The woods no longer felt familiar but an ancient realm of nightmares coming to life. Once they were inside, Sarah slammed the door and locked it tight, breathing heavily. The weight lifted just a bit, but the walls seemed to hum as if they held stories of the sinister presence spinning just outside. With trembling fingers, she turned on the lights, illuminating the small entryway, but the darkness outside loomed like a storm cloud. "Mommy?" Lucy's wide eyes shimmered with naive confusion. "Why can't we go back? Billy wants us to play with him. It's fun." "Because Billy's not the friend you think he is." Sarah's words dripped with urgency. Before she could explain, a soft tapping sound emanated from the window, gentle but insistent. Sarah's heart skipped. She edged closer, each step thick with fear. The tapping persisted like a beckoning hand. "Look, Mommy." Daniel tugged at her shirt, pointing towards the dark silhouette outside, slim and tall, with glowing eyes just beyond the glass. Her breath caught in her throat. The watcher stood there, watching, waiting, a distorted grin plastered beneath its hollow gaze. The ground felt unstable beneath her, and she realized the stories her great-grandmother had told, the secrets buried deep, were starting to unravel before her eyes. "Stay back!" she screamed, instinctively shielding her children. As they pressed into the corner of the living room, the watcher tilted its head, brow furrowing as if contemplating its next move. In that moment, Sarah understood the weight of her lineage and the way shadows danced in their lives. The past hadn't just come for her children, it had returned for her. Just as her resolve began to harden, the lights flickered, swaying as if they were reluctant to stay lit. A voice whispered, soft but chilling, "You can't keep them safe forever." It echoed through the house, slick and insistent, curling around her like smoke. Driven by determination mingled with terror, she grasped her children's hands tightly. "We need to hide," she whispered, adrenaline fueling her desperate plan. But would any place be safe enough? The watcher was already behind the door, and its presence thickened in the dark, ready to claim what was rightfully its. As the darkness pressed in closer, something else silently shifted in the room's corner, the sound of a child's laughter rising again, this time from within the house. Sarah felt a chill creeping down her spine as the laughter danced through the air, a mocking echo that reverberated off the walls. It was a sound that belonged in the dark, lingering long after joy had abandoned it. Her heart raced, primal instincts rising to the surface as she glanced at her children. Daniel's face paled, eyes wide with terror, while Lucy's expression morphed, a strange smile creeping in as if enchanted once more. "Don't listen to it." Sarah shouted, her voice raw. She pulled them closer, wrapping her arms around them tightly, feeling their small bodies trembling against her. The laughter twisted, almost teasing, like a serpent coiling around its prey. "Mommy, it's just Billy," Daniel whispered, fear mixing with confusion in his voice. "He wants to play. He's not bad." "No. He's lying to you." The response tore from her throat, urgent and desperate. The walls pulsed with life around her, a heartbeat that matched the growing dread in the room. "We have to go." She wanted to believe they could escape, that this was some nightmare they could wake up from. Still clutching her children, she scanned the dimly lit room for a place to hide. The door felt like a thin barrier against the forces outside, and she knew it wouldn't hold for long. "Quick, under the table," she commanded, her voice a sharp whisper as they rushed towards the old oak dining table. They barely fit, huddled close. She could feel Lucy's soft breath against her side, see Daniel's clenched fists trembling. As they crouched in the darkness beneath the table, the laughter outside morphed again, deeper now, each peal a promise of dread. The sound slid through the cracks of their fragile sanctuary, slinking into her mind and stoking the flames of ancient fears. A smooth shudder rippled through the house. The lights flickered once more, shadows performing a twisted dance across the walls. Sarah pressed her palms to her ears, but the laughter echoed inside her head, a haunting refrain that surged to engulf her. A scraping noise came from the door, slow, deliberate. Scratching, as if something was trying to claw its way in. The sound made her cringe, each reverberation splitting her reliance on reason apart. "Mommy," Lucy's voice trembled, small and fearful. "It's okay, baby. Just hold on to me," Sarah managed to say, forcing calm into her tone. But she felt the truth in her gut, nothing about this was okay. Suddenly, the scraping halted. A suffocating silence fell like an unwelcoming shroud. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, dread filling the air until it became hard to breathe. Sarah's heart raced faster, thumping against her ribcage. And then, just as her resolve wavered, there came a soft voice, a child's voice, sweet and sing-song. It lured, it cajoled. "Mommy, let us play. Billy says it'll be fun." A cold wave of terror washed over Sarah. This wasn't her Lucy's voice. This was a mockery, another trap woven by the watcher. "Kids, don't listen," she hissed, her grip tightening as they trembled together beneath the table. "Keep your eyes shut." But Lucy gasped, "I want to see, please, Mommy." For a heartbeat, Sarah panicked. What if Lucy slipped from her grasp? What if her daughter gave in to that siren call? The mother in her screamed to hold on fiercely, to protect. But somewhere deep inside, she feared her resolve might not be enough. Then, as if the air had been sucked from the room, the table shook. Something loomed above them, casting a long shadow across their small hiding place. It was then she saw it, a hand, skeletal slender, grasped the edge of the table, fingers curling inwards. Come out, it whispered, the voice now a rasp. "I just want to play." Terror gripped her limbs, freezing her in place. With each wobble of the table, the laughter surged again, echoing around her. But then, amid the chaos, she heard a new sound, another laugh, high-pitched and familiar yet laced with something unnaturally twisted. Was it Daniel, or was it another? The shadow loomed larger, and Sarah felt the fragile threads of her sanity begin to unravel. She couldn't let this be the end. She had to act. But as she started to rise, a chilling realization struck. The laughter suddenly stopped, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. "Mommy?" Daniel's voice quivered in the stillness, confusion etching his features. "No. Stay hidden," Sarah ordered, her voice barely a whisper. The weight of fear pressed down, freezing them under the table, and she knew it was far from over. And then, just outside their sanctuary, a soft, sing-song voice played on, "Why won't you come out, when the game is just beginning?" The darkness around her seemed to swell, ready to swallow them whole. What if the end of the game meant losing everything? What happens when the game is over? The voice lingered just a heartbeat away. It felt as if the walls themselves were listening, waiting for her next move. A breathless moment hung in the air as Sarah's mind raced. She could feel the weight of darkness pressing down, suffocating her thoughts, stealing away the fleeting remnants of hope. The laughter was gone, but the promise of a new kind of horror loomed behind the echo of that sing-song voice. In the silence, her heart pounded against her rib cage, a frantic call to life amidst the all-consuming dread. She shifted slightly beneath the table, instinctively positioning herself as a barrier between her children and the encroaching shadow. Each breath she took sounded like thunder in the stillness. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore," Daniel whispered, his voice barely above a breath. He was trembling, clinging to Lucy as if she were a lifeline. "Neither do I," Sarah muttered through clenched teeth, fighting the panic rising in her throat. She struggled to form a coherent thought. Just beyond the table, something shifted, an ominous presence awaiting the signal to strike. Water dripped somewhere, a slow, rhythmic sound that echoed through the aloneness. Fear knotted tightly in her stomach. The rhythm quickened, it was as if the house itself was alive, enjoying their despair. And then came the scrabbling noise again, this time creeping closer, dragging like fingernails on wood. Mommy Lucy's voice was uncertain yet soft, like a whisper in the void, "I wanna see Billy." "No." The growl escaped Sarah's lips, flat and fierce. But it was too late. Lucy's resolve shone brightly in her eyes. She was daring to peek from their sanctuary, to surrender to the call of something malevolent lurking just out of sight. In a flash, Sarah's mind plunged into thoughts of safety, and she grasped Lucy's shoulders tightly. "Baby, don't. Please." She felt the warmth radiating from her daughter's small frame, but it was quickly tainted by the chill that surrounded them. Just then, the shadows flickered against the wall, creating grotesque silhouettes that danced with wild abandon. Sarah steeled herself, unable to shake the feeling of being surrounded. She did not want to dream of what lay just beyond the edge of her vision. As the air thickened, Sarah could sense the shape above them shift, the skeletal fingers now clawing, scraping violently against the wood of the table. "Why are you hiding?" it taunted, breath trailing like smoke. Games are better when everyone plays. Her pulse raced, pounding into her ears until the world began to blur around her. She felt her children's heartbeats matching hers, a desperate, instinctive rhythm of survival as one. "Mommy, I just want to play," Lucy pleaded again, her voice tremulous but laced with a strange excitement that felt foreign and wrong. "No, Lucy. He's not your friend." Sarah's scream cracked the suffocating silence. But in that instant, the laughter returned, a piercing sound that pushed through the walls, an avalanche of glee spilling into their sanctuary. It was like shards of glass shattering the air, explosive in its urgency. Then, the table jolted. With a burst of instinct, Sarah flipped it over, sending her children sprawling, and she screamed, "Run!" Adrenaline surged through her. She could feel the warmth of the wooden floor, the cool brush of air against her skin. In an instant, they were scrambling to their feet, heartbeats echoing in their ears, the corners of the room closing in, but as they fled into the darkness beyond, a familiar voice echoed from somewhere deep in the shadows, sinister and all-knowing, "You can't run from me, I'm everywhere." The words hung in the air like a noose, tightening around her throat. Sarah dashed forward, gripping each child's hand tightly. The fear of losing them paralyzed her, yet she pushed through the crushing terror. They had to escape, there had to be a way out of this nightmare. As they reached the hallway, flickering lights revealed the doorway at the end, the outside world. A glimpse of freedom flickered faintly, like a dying star, but just as they surged forward, the door slammed shut with a deafening thud, echoing through the corridor like a funeral bell. "No!" Sarah gasped. Spinning around. The shadows shifted and coiled, bending closer, hungry, and aching for their fear. "Are you ready to play?" The voice cajoled, dripping sweetness turned sour, as laughter erupted again, filling the space, consuming their cries. Something told her, deep down, that the game was only just beginning. What would happen if they faced it instead of running? Would the game claim them as its players? The very thought sent a chill down Sarah's spine, tightening her grip on her children as the shadows danced closer, ready to claim their next pawn. The air felt thick, almost viscous, as Sarah turned back toward the looming shadows. The dark figures shifted fluidly, melting into an arrangement that made her heart race. With each passing moment, they grew bolder, inching closer with a sinister hunger. "Mommy, help!" Daniel cried, squeezing her hand tightly with a grip that was as fragile as it was fear-fueled. Each pulse of his little fingers sent shockwaves of dread through her. She could taste the salt of her own sweat on her lips, the overwhelming fear choking her. Desperation clawed at her throat as she tried to see beyond the enshrouded figures. "We have to find another way out," she shouted, the panic twisting her voice into something raw and frantic. "Where?" Lucy whimpered. Her innocent eyes flicked between Sarah and the gathering gloom, wide and terrified. They could already feel the cold seep into their bones, chilling them through layers of fabric. The laughter echoed again, sharp and mocking, as if the very walls of the house conspired against their escape. "Why run from a game you can win?" The voice sang, the words slithering through the air like a serpent ready to strike. "No!" Sarah barked, not wanting to hear any more. Yet, the words had planted a seed in her mind. A sickening doubt swirled within her. What if the only way to win was by playing? What if turning against the shadows would lead to their undoing? "Mommy, please." Lucy's voice trembled, her brows furrowing in confusion. "I want to play just a little." A cold sweat trickled down her spine. Lucy looked up at her, eyes filled with a childlike wonder mixed with fear. It was terrifying to see such a blend. Had the whispers twisted her daughter's thoughts? "No," Sarah insisted, her voice rising in distress. "We aren't playing anything. We need to get out of here." But the flickering lights were draining, their source waning like a dying star in a thickening void. Shadows wrapped around them, and with each heartbeat, Sarah felt a grip of icy terror seize her heart. The haunting laughter echoed again, mingling with the children's pleas, swirling into a cacophony that felt alive. "Try to hide or embrace the game, your choice." The shadows spoke, their voices a chilling chorus. "Mommy, I trust you," Daniel whispered, squeezing her hand tight. She looked at him, desperation rising like bile in her throat. She had to think, had to act. But time wasn't on their side, and the shadows seemed to know it. "Stay close," she shouted, pulling her children to her as she spun to face the deeper darkness that lurked at the end of the hallway. The door was locked, certainly, but perhaps there was another way. With the flickering lights casting anomalies against the walls, Sarah dashed deeper down the hall, each footfall echoing louder than the last, the sound of their combined breath a frantic prayer. What if this was the moment they faced their fear? Behind them, the laughter was savage, shrieking with glee as they moved farther away. "You can't run forever," it howled. "Playtime isn't over." As they rounded a corner, Sarah spotted another door, a small, unassuming exit partially hidden in the shadows. A flicker of hope ignited, but as she raced toward it, the ground trembled beneath them. "Mommy!" Lucy cried, but Sarah couldn't stop. The door loomed ahead, stark against the gloom, calling to them like a beacon. She yanked it open, only to find a dark, twisted staircase spiraling down into unknown depths. "Where does it go?" Daniel trembled, peeking into the abyss as shadows crept closer. "Into safety," she lied, forcing a weak smile as fear gripped her heart. "We have to go down. Now." Just as they stepped forward, a loud crash echoed behind them, the laughter transformation into a deafening roar that swallowed the hallway whole. "Don't leave us!" Lucy cried, and Sarah felt the weight of the world pressing against her. But the shadows were closing in. With a deep breath, Sarah turned toward the darkness, steeling herself. "Together, we face this." She pulled her children close, their unified heartbeat matching the urgency thrumming in her veins. As they plunged into the unknown staircase, the shadows twisted and writhed, whispering their sinister secrets. The game is far from over. Sarah felt it in her bones. Something dark awaited them at the bottom, but she had no choice. What awaited them in the bowels of the house? Would they find the escape they desperately needed, or would they become part of the very game they feared? As Sarah's foot grazed the first step, the air shifted, growing colder with each descent. She felt the darkness wrap around her like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. The stairwell spiraled further down, light receding until they were swallowed by an all-consuming blackness. "Is it safe, Mommy?" Daniel's voice wavered, a tremor of doubt threading through his words. "It has to be," Sarah replied, her own heart racing. She turned to glance back, but the door they'd just closed seemed to pulse with malevolence, almost as if it wanted to follow them into the abyss. The laughter echoed down the hall, a rasping reminder of the dangers left behind. Lucy gripped her hand tighter. The dread in the air thickened, more palpable than before, as if something unseen were brushing against their skin. "I'm scared," she whispered, looking up at her mother, trust and fear swirling in her wide eyes. "Just keep moving," Sarah urged, pushing them forward even when every instinct screamed to turn back. Each step descended into deeper terror, and nausea rising from her stomach as if the very house were alive. Exhaling through the shadows, they reached the bottom of the staircase, and a faint flicker of light ignited ahead. Sarah squinted, trying to make sense of the dim illumination. It wasn't warm, it seemed to pulse with a sickly green hue. "What is that?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Sarah murmured, cautiously leading her children toward it. As they crossed the threshold into the new chamber, an inexplicable chill hit them like a wave. The room was small, cluttered with old furniture shrouded in dust and cobwebs. And in the center, an antique table stood, draped in a fabric that looked strangely out of place, a rich crimson that seemed to breathe. Trembling, she stepped closer, sensing a weighty presence about the table. Scattered across its surface were various objects, a weathered doll, a cracked mirror, and a tarnished bell that emitted a low, mournful clang each time the air shifted. Ominous whispers floated through the air, flickering like shadows just beyond her vision. "Choose," they beckoned, their voices swirling around her like wind. "Play and find freedom, or remain hidden." "What are they saying?" Lucy asked, clutching Daniel's arm tightly. "There's no game here," Sarah snapped, trying to shake the dread wrapping around her. Yet, the undeniable pull of the table's objects was intoxicating, like bait thrown before a captive predator. Lucy's eyes widened at the cracked mirror, its pieces reflecting their frightened faces in distorted ways. "Mommy, look! The doll's looking at us." "Don't touch anything," Sarah hissed, stepping between her children and the deceptive allure of the items. But anxiety clawed at her. Each object seemed to whisper its own dark invitation, echoing what the shadows had said, promising liberation through participation. Before she could react, Daniel reached for the bell, his small fingers grazing its cold surface just as the darkness shifted around them, coming alive. The whispers escalated into a screech, swirling into a piercing cacophony that sunk into her bones. Panic seized Sarah. She yanked Daniel back, but not before the bell tolled heavily, sending vibrations through the room that rattled her teeth. In a flash, the chamber went dark again, the flickering green light extinguished and replaced by an overwhelming pressure. The laughter returned with fervor, too close, too intimate. "You've started the game now," it howled, reverberating off the walls. The floor beneath them shuddered as if responding to the call. The shadows surged forward, and Sarah felt her breath hitch in her throat. With no other choice, she screamed to her children, "Run! Back up the stairs!" But the laughter crescendoed to a deafening height. Suddenly, the room shifted, the walls twisting, the staircase was gone. They were trapped. "Mommy!" Lucy shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm here!" Sarah cried, desperately scanning for a way out as shadows coiled at their feet, slithering like snakes. She felt the weight of time crushing down around them, and the walls whispered promises of unthinkable horrors. Make a choice, the shadows sang sweetly, the chorus blending into a chaotic storm. Dread coursed through Sarah. What had she unleashed? And would her choices seal their fate forever? As chaos erupted, Sarah's mind raced, desperate to figure out a way to undo the game they had inadvertently entered. But the darkness was closing in, and she was running out of time. What nightmarish decision lay ahead, and would they escape, or become willingly part of the very horrors that chased them? The shadows pulsed with a life of their own, and Sarah's head spun as dark shapes danced and morphed around them. They writhed like tendrils, clawing at her arms and waist, pulling her down toward the ground. "Mommy! Help us!" Daniel cried, his voice slicing through the panic suffocating Sarah. She could barely breathe, her throat tight with fear. "Stay close," she shouted, wrapping her arms around her children. The shadows twisted and pulled back, as if considering their next move. The low murmur of whispers changed pitch, becoming a haunting melody that reverberated through the air, an unsettling symphony of despair. "What do we do?" Lucy whimpered, tears carving trails down her dirty cheeks. The edges of her trust cracked, glancing at the ensnaring darkness with wide, fearful eyes. "We have to find a way out," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls creeping closer, the air thickening, electric with unease. She turned her gaze to the antique table, the crimson cloth now pulsing more violently, as if ready to explode. What lay beneath? Surely it was better than staying here, trapped by the suffocating shadows. "No! Don't go near it!" Daniel shouted, fear electrifying his small voice. Ignoring the alarm in her son's tone, Sarah took a step closer. Gravitational pull, a sick magnetism, urged her forward. She sensed the lure of the mirror, the doll, the bell, whispering darkly, promising salvation if only she'd dare to participate. "Look at the mirror," Lucy urged, sniffing back her tears. The cracked glass reflected flickering images of her family, but each reflection was slightly warped, grinning at her. "No, no," Sarah breathed, recoiling. The ominous thrill of recognition pulsed in her chest as shadows flickered in the glass, mouths opening in exaggerated gasps. The room shifted again, the floor vibrating beneath them, and Sarah felt the urge to scream. "What do you want from us?" she yelled into the growing chaos. The whispers seemed to spiral upward, swirling like a tornado. Suddenly, the lights flashed, bathing them in ghostly green. From the center, the bell began ringing urgently, its clang cutting through the noise. Each chime resonated with an unearthly echo, drawing shadows to its rhythm. "Make a choice!" it shrieked, the darkness lurching forward. The table shivered ominously, and Sarah's heart dropped. "Just a game," she muttered to herself, though the terror clawed at her insides. "We can beat it." "Mommy!" Daniel's voice broke her concentration. "Choose." The shadows urged, their voices intertwining like fingers, pushing her toward the table. In a split-second decision, Sarah lunged. She yanked the weathered doll off the table, its glassy eyes staring blankly back at her, unblinking. The laughter stopped. Everything froze, time itself shattered into pieces. The air thickened, filling her lungs with dread. "What did you do?" Daniel gasped, jolting Sarah back to reality. I didn't mean to." She stammered, horrified. The doll trembled in her grip, a low growl emanating from deep within. She felt it vibrating against her palm, alive and thrumming like an ominous heartbeat. The walls trembled, and in a sudden rush, the shadows recoiled, hissing like snakes threatened by sunlight. A howl echoed from all directions, shaking the chamber as a cyclone of darkness swept through. "Release us!" The shadows screamed, desperate and furious. "Run!" Sarah yelled, pushing the children behind her as the decaying remnants of the room began to splinter and crack. The ground beneath them started to shift, and the air became suffocating, but where to run? Was the door gone forever, sealing their fate? The doll writhed in her hands, and terrified, she flung it away. It landed with a soft thud, eyes gleaming with malevolence, mocking the game they de-entered, and then, the walls quaked again, the shadows heaving as they imploded into a black whirlpool that threatened to consume everything in its wake. "Mommy!" Lucy shrieked, clinging to her. Time was fleeting, the darkness impatient. Would they escape this nightmare? Or was this just the beginning of something far worse? A crack appeared in the darkness, a blinding light beckoning them. "Go!" Sarah screamed, gripping her children's hands tightly as they raced toward the light, their only hope flickering before them. But what waited beyond that crack? Could they trust it? Every heartbeat was a countdown. As they ran, the shadows screamed, their voices blending in a cacophony of rage. What lay on the other side? Would freedom await them, or perhaps the darkest of fates? The blinding light surged closer, an ethereal glow cutting through the oppressive darkness like a knife. Hope flickered within Sarah's chest, a fragile flame that raged against the suffocating shadows clawing at them. But the shadows were relentless, their screeches drowning out anything resembling comfort. "Faster!" she urged, choking back her own panic as the tendrils of shadow slithered closer, brushing against her ankles like icy fingers. Lucy stumbled, her small feet caught in something viscous, her voice quivering. "I can't, Mommy." "No!" Daniel yelled, gripping his sister's arm. "We can't leave her." "Hold on!" Sarah shouted, dragging Lucy along as her legs fought against the unseen shackles of despair. Just beyond the crack, a swirling vortex of brightness beckoned, pulsating wildly, promising shelter from the darkness. The air vibrated around them, the crack growing larger, a window into a world far away from here. But as they drew nearer, the light flickered, seemingly struggling against the shadows inching closer. "Choices," the shadows hissed again, now with an urgent, sinister undertone. "Make your choice, or become ours." Creeping dread wormed its way into Sarah. What choice? There was no time. As if sensing her hesitation, the darkness intensified. Figures emerged with twisted, grinning faces, specters from their worst nightmares. They laughed, a sound that pierced through the din, mocking and haunting. The laughter was like shards of glass against her skin, relentless in its pursuit. "Mommy, help!" Lucy cried, her voice raw with fear. "We're almost there!" Sarah exclaimed, pushing the children forward, her heart pounding so forcefully it felt ready to burst. With one last desperate burst, they lunged through the crack. It felt like diving into a sea of light, the pressure lifting as the shadows shrieked behind them. Then they tumbled through, landing hard on cool grass. Wind whispered promises of safety, wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Sarah rolled over, trying to catch her breath, scanning their surroundings. They were outside of the house now, but the atmosphere was heavier, like the very air was holding its breath. She stood, helping the kids to their feet, but confusion tore through her. They weren't just at the house, they were in the backyard, but everything felt off. "Is it over?" Daniel asked, eyes wide, searching the dark treetops above for any sign of danger. "Mommy?" Lucy tugged at her shirt, trembling. "What was that place?" Sarah shushed them, her instincts blaring alarms. The trees loomed tall and menacing, their shadows stretching ominously, further than they should. An eerie silence settled, chipping away at the sense of relief. She turned back towards the house, expecting to see it looming behind them, but it was gone. In its place stood a gnarled tree, twisted like the shadows they'd just escaped. A hollow in its trunk glowed faintly, pulling Sarah's gaze, resonating with a quiet hum that felt inviting yet dangerous. "Don't look at it!" she yelled, the fear in her voice slicing through the stillness, but it was too late. The children's curious eyes were fixed on the tree. The glow pulsed rhythmically, words echoing softly from its depths, summoning them with promises of opportunity, of power. "Mommy, what's happening?" Daniel's voice trembled, Sarah's mind raced. The escape from the house had almost felt like victory, but now, she understood the truth. The darkness hadn't been vanquished. It was waiting, watching, and it seemed it had found a new trap to lay. Could she protect her children from what lurked within the gnarled tree? As the glow brightened, shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, blending in with the blackness around them. Was the real nightmare only just beginning? The air thickened as the tree pulsed with an unnatural glow, its hollow inviting and foreboding all at once. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to move, but her children were rooted to the spot, eyes wide, mesmerized. "Lucy, Daniel, back away," she coaxed, her voice tightening with urgency. "Now." They hesitated, the glow flickering like a strobe, illuminating the terror painted across her face. Shadows stirred at the edges of their vision, swaying like tall grass in a foreboding wind. It felt as if the very ground beneath them was alive, shifting in anticipation of their next move. Suddenly, the soft hum morphed into whispered voices, a cacophony of alluring promises that tickled Sarah's ears. "Join us, be part of something greater, don't you want to be free?" "Mommy, I want to go home," Lucy whimpered, her tiny hands clammy against Sarah's jeans. She could feel the panic creeping in, wrapping around her like chains. "I know, sweetie, but we can't. We need to get away from here." But the whispers grew louder, filling the space around them, scratching at her mind. The children, still entranced, were ignoring her. "Sarah." The voice was low, dripping with sweet malice. "All you have to do is step closer. Just a little closer. You'll be safe. Your children can be saved, too. Get back." Sarah shouted, pulling Lucy behind her. She felt trapped in a web, fear clawing at her throat. The shadows drew nearer, arms stretching and bending in impossible angles, like grotesque marionettes brought to life. Finally, Daniel broke free of the trance, his instincts kicking in as he pulled at his sister's hand. "No, we should go. It's a trick. Daniel. We need to run." They turned, hearts pounding, and bolted backward, but the tree seemed to shift, the path leading away from it also swirling into darkness. Panic surged as they stumbled, backpedaling into the unfathomable gloom, stumbling past twisted roots that gripped at their ankles. The wind howled around them. The shadows were relentless, they melted together, forming a dark figure that loomed larger with every step they took. Sarah's mind screamed for clarity. "We have to find a way out of here. Look for the house." She had to believe there was safety somewhere, but when she glanced back, the tree was glowing even brighter, its hollow now pulsing with a ghastly light. "You're only delaying the inevitable," it echoed mockingly, as the shadows chuckled around them. "Mommy!" Lucy cried, panic flooding her voice, but Sarah was cemented by dread as she scanned their surroundings. This backyard felt like a prison, twisted and unfamiliar, the light ahead fading like hope itself. In the distance, a shriek cut through the silence, a harrowing sound that froze them in place. Was it the wind, or something more sinister? The whispers intensified, hissing promises of power and freedom, wrapping around Sarah's mind like cold, clinging fog. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lucy whimpered, her voice trembling. "Me too, honey," Sarah murmured, heart racing. "But whatever happens, we stick together. We don't let go." A rustle from the shadows drew nearer, and then, without warning, the glimmering eyes of creatures emerged, waiting for any sign of weakness. Suddenly, the earth trembled beneath them, cracking wide like the jaws of an unseen beast. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She could either step forward into the light or risk going deeper into the darkness. Time slipped away as the ground threatened to swallow them whole. The weight of the shadows pressed down with unbearable force. "Make your choice," the whispers taunted as the void loomed. Join us or be torn apart. Could Sarah summon the strength to fight? Or would the choice be made for her? The shadows beckoned, waiting for an answer. A decision hers and her children's, cloaked in dread. What would they choose, and what would that choice summon next? As the ground shook beneath Sarah's feet, reality felt like it was splintering into madness. The overwhelming pull of the shadows, whispering threats and promises, gnawed at her resolve. She took a steadying breath, clutching her children's hands. This is the moment we stand together. We don't let go. With their eyes fixed on her, she felt a flicker of strength surge within. United before the looming darkness, they faced the twisted roots and the beckoning glow of the gnarled tree, which pulsed with a sickly, ashen light. Stay behind me. We can't let it win. The shadows surged forward, thick and hungry, and Sarah saw faces form among their swirling mass, past victims twisted into eternal torment. Their eyes begged for release, and she felt bile rise in her throat. "Mommy, please!" Daniel cried, as Lucy whimpered and gravitated towards the glow, enchanted. The air felt electric, like static before a storm. "Lucy! Daniel! Focus on me. We're leaving this place." She took a step back, yanking them from the edge of curiosity's abyss. An idea struck her, sharp and desperate. What if the games could be turned against the Watcher? What do we do? Daniel's voice was small, but his eyes held desperation. Sarah recalled the stories her great-grandmother told. The Watcher fed on fear, yes, but it also despised the familiar. A twisted idea formed in her mind, a gamble that might just work. "We're not afraid of you," she yelled into the gloom, her voice steadying with conviction. "We're stronger than you think." The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if struck. In that instant, they flickered uncertainly. The walls pulsed, breathing with their hesitation. Seizing the moment, she tightened her grip on her children, drawing strength from their presence. "We're taking control," Sarah shouted, surprising even herself with the intensity. "I command this place. You do not own us." With every word, she felt a surge of energy vibrate through her fingertips, as if her defiance illuminated the darkness. At first, nothing happened. The cacophony of whispers simmered momentarily. Then, with a thunderous crack, the ground beneath them shattered, sending the shadows spiraling back. A blinding light erupted around them, slashing through the dark. The twisted faces faded, their horrified expressions morphing into confusion, even fear. "You dare defy the game?" they hissed. But Sarah held her ground, lightning dancing at her fingertips. "We're not pawns. We choose our own fate." In a brilliant flash, the glow surged outward and illuminated the chaotic space around them. The shadows writhed as if some unseen force bound them, and still, Sarah pressed forward, shouting, "Get out now." With the shadows distracted, she turned, plucking Lucy and Daniel close as they bolted through the exposed rift that had opened in the trembling ground. Echoes of rage filled the air like howling winds, but she didn't look back. They scrambled through the blinding light, stumbling onto soft grass, their feet sweeping away from the clutches of the dark. Suddenly, she felt the world shudder sideways and they found themselves back in the backyard, where the gnarled tree stood silent and watching. Panic surged inside her chest as she turned around, half expecting the shadows to follow. But the house behind them was merely that, a structure, stripped of its sinister weight. "Is it over?" Lucy's quivering voice cut through the stillness. I think we did it," Sarah replied, breathless. A sense of disbelief washed over her as she clutched her kids close. But even as relief flooded her veins, the glow from the gnarled tree flickered, a lingering threat. She opened her mouth to say something, to urge them away, but it was as if the air itself had gone still. They could still feel the dark. "No more games," she whispered fiercely, locking her gaze onto the tree's haunting hollow. The children looked back at her, innocent and trusting. "No more." Together, they stepped away from its pull, moving toward their home, their sanctuary. The neighborhood seemed vibrant now, colors alive in the fading dusk overhead, piercing the remnants of despair. She felt the weight of past traumas lift, the cycle broken, if just for now. As they walked arm in arm, distant laughter faded, and Sarah realized the strength in unity. Not just against the Watcher, but against any fear that lingered. They were free. Tracing fingers through their intertwined hands, she whispered into the twilight, "The past will always be part of us, but it will not define us." Moments later, they passed the familiar front porch, and as they stepped inside, Sarah locked the door behind them, exhaling a sigh of relief. For tonight, they were safe, and they had each other. But in the stillness, an echo of laughter lingered in the corners of her mind, a reminder of the shadows that once haunted her family. It would always be there, waiting. And now, the choice remained to fortify their bonds, knowing those shadows could never fully fade. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans know the importance of lifting this channel together.